welcome to Sidewall Japan. Today's lecture is about what happens if I do not file the tax return. So this is important. Please listen carefully. Basically, there is a variety of the penalties for not filing tax return or underreporting the tax. The first one is interest tax, and the next one penalty for late payment, and penalty tax for underreporting, and the penalty for not filing tax return, and heavy penalty cases, and also there is criminal charges. You have to go to the prison, if it's a malicious case. So let me explain you one by one. The first one is interest tax. This is not really, the penalty for not filing the tax return. It's more like interest for the late tax payment. Under the Japanese tax law, the corporate tax, the filing deadline is usually within 2 months after the fiscal year end. But if you file the application to the tax office, that filing deadline can be extended to just 1 month only for the corporate. But the interesting thing is that the payment deadline is still within 2 months after the fiscal year end. So if you pay the tax after the 3 months later, after 3 months, you need to pay the interest tax for that amount, and the interest rate is 1.8%. And because nature of this is the interest, it is treated as a deductible expense. The next one is a penalty tax for late payment. If you're late for the payment, you have to pay the penalties. Interest rate is 2.8% for the first 2 months, but after 2 months passed, interest rate will go up to the 9.11%. And this is the nature of this is the penalty, so it is not a deductible expenses. And the maximum period is 1 year after the filing deadline. So if you make a payment of the tax which was due about 5 years ago, it's not like you have to pay the interest for the 5 years. The maximum period for the interest calculation is just 1 year. This one is a penalty tax for underreporting. If you file the tax returns, but by mistake, you file the tax return, you pay the less amount than actually you have to pay. This penalty tax for underreporting will be applied. If the additional tax payment is less than the 500,000 Japanese yen, the penalty rate is 15%. But for the additional tax payment exceeding 500,000 Japanese yen, the interest rate will be 20%. And of course, this is not a deductible expense. And if you file the tax, if you amend your tax return and file the amended tax return before you receive any notice from the tax office, you do not have to pay this penalty for underreporting. So it's kind of encouraging the taxpayer to file the correct tax return. But if you amend your tax return after you receive the notice from the tax office, you have to pay this penalty tax for underreporting. The next one, the penalty for not filing tax returns. So this is not a good case. The amount is of less than the 500,000 Japanese yen. The tax liability is multiplied by 50% will be your penalty. and the amount exceeding 500,000, tax liability multiplied by 20% will be the penalty for you. But if you file the tax return voluntarily before you receive any notice from the tax office, the penalty tax rate will be reduced to the 5%. It can't be at 0%, but reduced to the 5%. And this is very important. If you are applying for if your status is blue form tax return status, if you're late for the filing more than 2 times, you may lose your status. So that means you will lose a loss carried forward, or you lose the other tax benefit by being a blue form tax return status. So you have to watch out. This one is a heavy penalty tax. So this is for the severe case, the penalty for dressing and hiding. For example, if you're hiding your sales from the customers, or if you record expenses which is actually not paying, these heavy penalty tax will be applied. The penalty tax rate is kind of high. It's starting from the 35% and it's maximum 45%. So never get this heavy penalty tax, because if the amount is too much, it will become very difficult to continue your business. And there is a case for the criminal charge. If you are if you are not paying the tax intentionally, or if your case is very malicious cases, well, sometimes you get in prison. Well, in case you do not pay the tax unintentionally, the imprisonment period of 1 year or less, or the penalty of 500,000 Japanese yen will be applied. And in case you do not pay the tax intentionally, imprisonment of 5 years or less, or the penalty of 5 million Japanese yen will be applied. But these cases, if you are not paying the tax, it really depends on the amount of the tax you are not paying. If it's paying for example, I think the 10 million Japanese yen or more, well, there's a possibility that you will get the criminal charge. But usually, these will not apply. If you just make a mistake if you make a mistake for filing the tax return, these will not apply. So please file the tax return. Otherwise you may get really bad severe penalty for that. See you next time. I hope you enjoyed this channel. If you like it, please subscribe. See you next time.